Senior Fellow at Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Dr. and Professor, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, how fragile is this ceasefire phase 1, and what are the challenges that are still not resolved between this?
Well, the main challenge right now is that Hamas has not yet met its obligations under the ceasefire, which is to release all the killed hostages. It has only released part of them, and that is a breach of the agreement. Now, Hamas claims that it does not know where all the bodies are, which is very unlikely, but Israel did provide to the United States and to some of the other intermediaries all the information, all the intelligence that we have on the location of all the bodies. And as long as Hamas does not return all the bodies of the hostages that it abducted, then there will be no progress with the ceasefire. Another issue, of course, is the mass killing of civilians by Hamas since Israel's withdrawal from some of the areas of the Gaza Strip, which raises, of course, much concern about the ability and the willingness of the international community to disarm this terrorist organization.
And Professor, now looking back at the demand by Israel and also other world leaders or U.S. for the entire disarmament of Hamas, how do you think, how realistic is this?
Much of it depends on the willingness of the countries that were involved in the signature of the ceasefire, mostly the United States. The United States is the main guarantor of this agreement. President Trump has expressed many times, including when he addressed the Knesset, Israel's parliament last week, that he is determined to disarm Hamas. There was also, as we know, a statement at the Sharm el-Sheikh summit also last week reaffirming this commitment. That will require military presence from other countries on the ground with a credible ability and willingness to confront Hamas and to take away its weapons.
And Professor and Dr. Navon, how do you think, who will be able to do it? Do you think it would be U.S. or Qatar or Turkey or any other country who would be strong enough to put this emphasis on Hamas to disarm or push them to disarm?
Well, I don't expect, unfortunately, I do not expect Turkey and Qatar to confront Hamas because they support Hamas, in fact. There's no doubt that as far as Israel is concerned, the role that President Trump agreed to grant to Qatar and Turkey in the Gaza Strip is very concerning because those are two regimes that are supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood, including Hamas, which is a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. So obviously those two countries are not going to disarm Hamas. It will have to be done by armies of other countries that are less supportive of Hamas, but definitely not Turkey and Qatar. At the end of the day, I doubt that the United States will send troops on the ground. In fact, I think President Trump made very clear that at this point he does not intend to send American soldiers in Gaza. But as long as there is no military force in the areas evacuated by Israel with a clear mandate and a willingness to disarm Hamas, it will be very elusive to disarm this terrorist organization.
Thank you, Dr. Navon, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now we stay on this topic. Another body of a slain Israeli hostage was identified in Israel as 54-year-old Ronen Engel from Kibbutz Nir Oz. Engel's body was handed over by the Palestinian militant group Hamas as part of a U.S. brokered deal to end the war in Gaza. Another body was handed over and is yet to be identified by Israel. Under the agreement between Israel and Hamas, the Islamist group has released 20 living hostages last week and is to release remaining 28 bodies it was holding since its attack on Israel on October 7, 2023. Now, Hamas has so far released 13 bodies to Israel, one of which was not of an Israeli hostage, leaving at least 16 slain hostages still in Gaza. In exchange for the hostages release, Israel had released nearly 2,000 Palestinian convicted prisoners and detainees. Now, for this discussion, we go back to Dr. Emmanuel Navon. He's an international relations lecturer at Tel Aviv University, as well as senior fellow at Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. Joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Dr. Navon, for staying with us. Now, looking back at this, why is there a huge difference in ratio of the released personnel from both sides, from Hamas as well as Israel?
Because unfortunately, these are the demands of Hamas, and Israel is willing to pay a very heavy price to free its hostages, and Hamas knows this. Hamas is a death cult, but it is a death cult that knows that Israel and Jews in general, for us, one of the most important values is life. We value life as much as they value death. So they brought upon death and destruction of their own people for a demented ideology, and they don't care about the dead people in Gaza. But we, on the other hand, we value life, and we are willing to pay a very heavy price to save our civilians. And Hamas knows this, which is why Hamas has been able to blackmail Israel. And for each civilian abducted from his or her bed on October 7, we've had to release many more convicted criminals, people who committed crimes and acts of terrorism and killed people with their own hands. And that is a tragedy, which is why Hamas has been using abductions and hostages in order to release its own killers and criminals. Hence the difference in numbers.
And how are people in Israel? Are they happy with the current status of this peace plan or peace phase 1 and how it is unfolding as of now?
Well, I think the different polls conducted in Israel on public opinion show that a majority of Israelis support the ceasefire agreement that was brokered by President Trump, by the United States, especially, of course, the release of the last hostages, the living hostages, and hopefully very soon all the bodies of the killed ones. But the question is, of course, what will happen now? And we've discussed it before. Will there be really a better future for both people or not? Unfortunately, we have very good reasons to be very skeptical about Hamas and its backers. But I would say that most Israelis, of course, after 2 years of a very, very harsh war, support the fact that finally, after 2 years, not only have our hostages, living hostages, been released, but also don't forget that after 2 years of war, Israel has basically prevailed over the Iranian axis of aggression by crippling, together with the United States, the Iranian nuclear program and missile program, the fall of the Assad regime, the fact that both Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza have been mostly crippled. But the struggle is not over. The war is over, but the struggle for Israel's future and well-being is not, because our enemies are still there and still trying to do mischief.
Yes, Dr. Navon, as you rightfully mentioned, a lot of our guests mentioned that this is not the problem. It hasn't been solved in long term. So when talking about long-term resolution between these two, Gaza and Israel, who do you think should be representing Palestine or Gaza? Should it be PA or should it be Hamas? And how serious should these organizations be taken?
Well, the question of representation should belong to the people. Unfortunately, as we know, there is no democracy not only among the Palestinians, but more generally in the Arab world. Look at our region, look at the Middle East. Nowhere in the Middle East, except in Israel, is there freedom and democracy. So, the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, was last elected in 2005 for a 4-year term. That was 20 years ago. He has outlived his mandate for 16 years. As for the Gaza Strip, I remind you that Israel completely withdrew from the Gaza Strip in 2005, and therefore the local population could and should have taken its own destiny to its hands, and maybe it could have turned Gaza into a successful country with an elected government, but it didn't. Instead, it brought Hamas to power, and Hamas has turned the Gaza Strip into a military power, basically a terror state. So it's not for Israel to decide who should represent the Arab Palestinian population, but unfortunately, they're not given a chance because in the West Bank, or what we call Judea and Samaria, they're ruled by a corrupt and undemocratic Palestinian Authority. And in Gaza, Hamas took power in 2007 and has brought catastrophe on that territory.
Yes, Dr. Navon, that was a perfect answer, and I will improve my question. Thank you very much for sharing that. Please stay with us as